There's been a lot of change happening in the industry, and for those of us in technology, right now feels like exponential change, particularly in the era of AI. If you look at infrastructure investments, if you look at how it's getting deployed, the last decade and a half has been really focused on the data center and the cloud. And the pandemic, in some ways, has also, prolonged focus outside of data centers. But if you think about it, 95% of the users are outside in campus and branch environments. Today, if you look at from a security perspective, almost 70% of successful breaches happen in campus and branch environments. And then you look at amount of traffic. 70% of the traffic, interactive flows, originate from branch and campus environments. So this user and device-centric nature of networking as well as security, it's really today an architecture, an artifact of the 1990s. And that's hurting enterprises as they look at strengthening their security posture. And Nile's view is, let's put a focus on that. Let's see how do we build secure networks and deliver those as a service. So, you're able to radically shrink the attack surface for most of the organizations, particularly when they don't have IT staff in these different branch and campus environments. Nile came into being to really look at how do we service this user and device-centric environments in branch and campuses from a completely different lens. And as I was sharing, this architecture is really a 1990s architecture, which means, you have different boxes for different things. It's a really box-centric architecture. The management of these boxes is an operational overhead. And then, really being able to look at the complexity associated with it. It's like managing, spaghetti. And, that worked 20 years ago, but today in this age of AI, it's a very fragile architecture. And we hear from CIOs, CISOs, saying they're unable to drive network transformation or digital transformation because this is really sandbagging them. And so I think our focus is to look at not just adding another box or inventing another protocol, but our goal is to say, how do we take the learnings we've had in data center and cloud environments, where there was a significant amount of effort put in terms of unification of the infrastructure, the platformization, if you will, focus on zero trust, intense focus on automation, and bring all of these into branch and campus environments. And not only that, how do you make it much more easy to deliver these as a service that's focused on outcomes? So in a nutshell, Nile's really attacking that problem, which not many in the industry are currently focused on. And not only are we looking at that problem, we're looking at it with a completely different architectural shift. So it's a brand new architecture focused on unification, radical simplification, and relentless automation, all of which is powered by AI. And the goal is to really deliver this as a service to customers the world over. When we think about it in the context of zero trust, which really is about having least privileges and a trust-based ecosystem, it's hard to do that in a legacy environment which was never built with security in mind. And if you look at the architectures in branches and campus environments, security is usually bolted on. It's another appliance, another device, something else that's brought on top of the spaghetti that we talked about. And I think that really makes enforcing zero trust principles extremely hard. In fact, Gartner is saying more than 30-40% of organizations are walking away from zero trust just because of the complexity of implementing it. So our goal with the architecture that I talked about is not to treat security as an add-on or as a bolted-on entity, but really to bake it into the fabric. So it's a foundational principle, all of which is baked on zero trust principles. So we call this the zero trust fabric. And so with that being a foundational aspect of the architecture itself, you get a lot of these data center class security capabilities in branch and campus environments, which were essentially being treated as second-class citizens before. So I think for us, security and connectivity are two sides of the same coin. And so we call this as a secure network as a service. And it's really built on this foundation of zero trust. Today, the pace of change is extremely high. And what we see is many of our customers across the industry, in the IT organization, they're being challenged to do more with less. There's a tremendous amount of expectation on the IT organization, and certainly they're fielding a lot of things coming their way, whether it's change management, security incidents, expansion, mergers and acquisitions, and these are actually happening exponentially, and AI is an accelerant in some sense. But the thing is, they're not getting additional budget. They're not getting more resources. So the existing teams are really being challenged to do more with less. And in that context, it's hard to drive outcomes. And where Nile steps in is it makes it easy for them through an autonomous operational structure to be able to get ahead of these things, and with this as a service delivery, really focus on outcomes without a huge amount of heavy lifting required from them. So in a way, this whole NaaS architecture that I talked about is about unburdening IT while still allowing them to deliver these strategic outcomes. When we look at AI, AI is a means to an end. And so it becomes yet another tool in the toolkit, if you will. And when we start to talk about autonomous operations, it's really saying, hey, can I recognize some of these patterns, whether it's network anomalies, security anomalies, operational anomalies, and start to make them much more autonomous in nature across the entire life cycle. So typically when you're rolling out infrastructure networks in different parts of the world across different locations, having that operational standardization goes a huge way in terms of decreasing cost and complexity. And the more autonomous we can make it, that means less resources that need to be invested, less truck rolls that are required. And when something goes wrong, you really don't want to be caught flat-footed. So what Nile's done is take advantage of AI and bring in autonomous operations across day 0, day 1, day 2 through N. So we're hand-holding customers across the journey of their entire deployment and over the life cycle of their engagement with the offering. And this, we've seen, radically cuts complexity down for them, and it shrinks the attack surface, but it also, results in huge cost savings. And Nile is a subscription-based OpEx offering. So they like the predictability they see, but they also see 50+% in terms of cost savings, which is you don't have people complaining about. There is a fallacy in the industry that once you adopt autonomous operations and capabilities, then you're essentially replacing IT staff. I don't believe this to be the case. In fact, it empowers IT staff to do more and do it in a predictable way. They do end up preventing burnouts. We hear from a lot of customers in terms of how stretched they are. And so it really brings sanity into their lives. It empowers them. It allows them to become much more strategic. And as with automation, we've seen this over the last 15 years. It has increased productivity. It has increased the outcome-driven nature of things that IT has been now known for. So we believe this is an extension along similar lines where it's not just helping them drive outcomes, it's also making them much more strategic. Nile was a cloud services entity day one. So we have a very rich security services catalog. And originally we started off with offering secure access with a very high performance, penalty-based guarantees, financially and all of that. And across the industry, we've become known for a solution that just works. Since then, we've also added a number of other things into the services catalog. So you can do secure radius for authentication. We have a secure guest access, which is both easy as well as inherently secure, and it's a very unique solution. We have secure DHCP, and we have trust and edge solutions. So there's a variety of different things that our customers can choose either together in terms of the services that they deploy at the edge. So you can think of this as SASE, which is mostly a WAN construct, but what Nile has brought it is in the context of the LAN. And or they could do it in an a la carte format and incrementally scale those security services as the case may be. But it's all based on this foundation of the Zero Trust fabric, and with wired and wireless being the connectivity options from Nile. The people that are leaning into Nile are a lot of C-level decision makers across the industry. We are operating today across 12 different industry verticals, and many of these are top-down changes where you have change agents, transformative CIOs that want to accelerate digitization, transformation in the context of their enterprise or their university or their government institution, you name it. And they take a very different view in terms of how Nile can come in and help accelerate those while still focusing on performance and high security. And so these are the ones that we engage with, the CIOs, the CISOs for the most part. But we also have a lot of the network and security practitioners, and it's a partner alongside for them in their day-to-day roles, and they're very actively engaged both in terms of the decision as well as influencing the decision and working in tandem with the Nile solution there. For us, 2026 is going to be one of continued scale. So we are looking at how we come across as a brand that's very vibrant in the industry. We've built in a number of proof points over the last couple of years, hundreds of customers across these different verticals. So how do we take that, cascade it, taking advantage of the Zero Trust fabric, taking advantage of the cloud-based services delivery, as well as this autonomous operations. And in a way, it's very unique because the rest of the industry, you have a box vendor that's innovating on technology, but it's somebody else's responsibility to deliver the service. And so these are sometimes two ships in the night. With Nile, these two motions are fused into the same entity, where we not just innovate on the technology, but we also deliver on the operations and the services. And so that makes it a lot more homogeneous for customers in terms of the experience, but it also makes it inherently perhaps the most secure network in the world, which they can enjoy as a service.